I won a limit 5 card draw tournament on PokerStars, beating out 228 other players. This is a game where you have 5 cards and you have one opportunity to replace some of the cards in your hand to try and make the best 5 card hand that you can. And it uses limit betting, meaning that you can't just bet whatever you want. You are limited to the betting structure that the tournament has, which I think it actually makes it easier to win because if no one's able to go all in, it means that you're able to play lots of small pots. And if you're making better decisions than your opponents, then you can have quite a bit of success in this game and kind of reducing the variance. And for me, of all the games I've played on this site, this is the one that I've actually had the most success with because every time I've played, it's had over 200 players, and I have won this tournament, no lie, 3 out of the 5 times that I've played it. So there's definitely a lot of possibility for consistent success, even as simple as the game is. You just get one draw and you are limited to how much you can bet. So the rules are very simple, but you'll see that there's a lot of room to just dominate this game against the people playing in this play money tournament. So for this video, I'm going to share my strategy for before the draw, during the draw, and after the draw, and then I'll just share the tournament replay. So I'm going to start with my preflop strategy. When I'm under the gun, I'm going to raise a pair of kings or anything better than a pair of kings. If I'm in the hijack, I'll be raising a pair of queens or better. If I'm in the cutoff, I'll be raising a pair of jacks or better. If I'm on the button, I'll be raising a pair of nines or better. And if I'm in the small blind, I'll be raising a pair of sevens or better. And anything that's not in that range of hands, I'll be folding everything else. So I'm raising and folding everything and pretty much never limping. And I might, tighten up or loosen up my ranges depending on what other people are doing. Like if I'm a big chip leader, for instance, and everyone else is playing really tight and not really playing back at me, then I might open a little bit wider. And there might be some other circumstances where I might have to tighten up a little bit. But that's my default strategy for the opening ranges. And that's assuming that it folds to me in each of those positions. If I have a straight draw or a flush draw, I'm going to fold those most of the time. I think a lot of people, they get excited if they see 4 cards to a straight or 4 cards to a flush because they just need one more card to make a strong hand. And it is a really strong hand when they make it, but it's pretty unlikely that they're actually going to hit their straight draw or their flush draw. It's going to be somewhere from 15 to 20% of the time that they hit their draw, which is not good enough to really be playing those hands. The other thing to keep in mind is if you don't make your straight or flush, you're going to have absolutely nothing most of the time. So I generally fold those hands. The one time that I will play a straight draw or a flush draw is if I have 4 cards to a straight or 4 cards to a flush already, and if I'm getting a really good price. For example, maybe if I'm in the small blind and a couple people limp in, and I know the big blind isn't going to raise very much, then I might limp in because I'm getting a really good price there. Generally, I want to have the pot be 4 or 5 times the amount that I'm putting in for me to play a hand like that. It's also tougher to get value for your straights and flushes in the limit format, which is something else to keep in mind. Now I'm going to talk about how I respond when someone limps or raises before it gets to me. If 1 or 2 people limp before the action gets to me, I'm still going to be playing a raise or fold strategy. I'm rarely going to just limp like they are, but I will tighten up my opening ranges if people have limped in before me. For example, if I'm on the cutoff and I'm normally raising a pair of jacks or better, If there are one or two people who limped before me, then I might tighten that up and only raise if I have a pair of kings or better, or maybe a pair of aces or better. I do see people limp with strong hands sometimes, so it is something where I want to tighten up a little bit against that. If someone raises before me, then I generally give raises quite a bit of credit. I think most people limp a lot, and if someone raises, they generally have something pretty good. And I think the people who are raising are usually raising similar ranges to what I'd be raising. So, for instance, if someone's raising under the gun, I'll usually assume that they have a pair of kings or better, which is what it would be for me. So if I had any lower pair, like even a pair of queens, I'm just going to fold against their raise because they should only have better hands than a pair of queens. If I have a pair of kings, it's a close spot between calling or folding. If I have a pair of aces or a weak two pair, then I would probably call. And if I had um, a strong two pair or anything better than two pair, then I would probably put in, you know, another raise on top of their raise. So generally you want to think about all the hands that they can have and make sure you're not playing hands that are worse than everything that they have, and raising things that are better than most of the things that they have. The last thing I'm going to talk about for preflop strategy is playing from the big blind. Now, in most poker games, if you're in the big blind and someone raises, you can call with all kinds of different hands because you're getting a good price. But in 5 card draw, I'm generally going to fold a lot from the big blind because the equities don't run very close in this game like they would in Texas Hold'em. For instance, if I have a pair of sevens in the big blind and someone in the cutoff raises, then I would expect that person to have, maybe a pair of jacks or better. So if I have a pair of sevens, I'm going to be an underdog against everything that they have. And it turns out that if one person has a pair versus another person who has a pair, the person with the bigger pair is going to still have the best hand 80% of the time after the draw. So, given that I have the pair of sevens, I'm going to be folding. Even though I'm getting a good price, I'm just such a big underdog to actually make the best hand. So, I think that's something else that's unique about my strategy is that I play pretty tight from the big blind. Now I'm going to talk about my strategy for the draw. Generally, my strategy is to replace as many cards as possible. So, for instance, if I have maybe I raised on the button with a hand like ace 10 10 5 2, I'm going to only keep the tens and replace everything else. Even though I have an ace in my hand, which is the highest card, and I could easily draw an ace to make a pair of aces with a pair of tens, it actually turns out that you're mathematically more likely to win the hand if you just keep the pair of tens. The value of giving yourself a better chance to make a set is mathematically more likely to give you the best hand and is also more likely that you'll win a big pot because if you make a set, that's a pretty strong hand in this game. If I'm in a situation where, say, I'm in the big blind with a garbage hand and someone limps in, so I get to see a free draw, and let's say I have something like ace queen 9 5 2, no pairs, I'm generally going to keep the ace and replace all the other cards. I think some people might like to keep the ace and the queen because they have two big cards and they might think they're more likely to make a big pair by keeping both of those. But for me, I think you're more likely to make a monster hand if you just keep one card, like an ace. You might make a set of aces, for instance. Whereas if you keep the queen, you're kind of trying to get one big pair or maybe two pair. Now I'm going to talk about my post-draw strategy. I think this is something where experience is just valuable. As you play this game a few times, you'll start to get a feel for which cards are generally the best after the draw. I think generally you want to hope for two pair or better after the draw. So if you have a pair of jacks and you draw and your hand doesn't improve and the other player bets, you can feel pretty confident that they're going to have you beat most of the time because they're generally going to be value betting two pair or better. Now, if there's someone that's aggressive or just really splashy, then you might have to make a hero call with a big pair. It also is worth noting how big the pot is. If you're getting a really good price, you might also have to look them up. But generally, I'm hoping for two pair or a set if I'm going to be putting more chips in the pot after the draw. If there are three or more people in the hand, then I'm going to tighten up my standards even more, where I might hope to have like a good two pair, like a two pair with queens or kings at the very least. The last thing that I'll mention about strategy after the draw is that if you're out of position, I think you do have to check some good hands occasionally. If you're just only betting good hands and checking everything else, then it makes it easy for your opponent to bluff you. And another advantage of checking, some two pair or set type hands occasionally is that you can put in the check raise especially if you know the other person's going to be playing aggressively and betting a lot, then I might like to check raise with a strong hand. So that's my overall strategy for how I play this game. Like I said, I've had pretty consistent success playing this way. Now I'm just going to share all the hands that I played, getting from top 40 down to 1, and hope you enjoy. If you enjoyed watching this video, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks.